Hello, good morning everyone. Welcome to Design Week Philippines 2023 On the Edge, the country's festival for Filipino design and creativity. I am Esme Palaganas. I am the co-founder of PHX Fashion Group, and I'm also a visiting lecturer for design schools and business universities here in the Philippines. So welcome everyone again, a very good morning, and thanks for joining us. Returning for its 12th year, Design Week Philippines invites us to explore the world through its theme, On the Edge, to push against today's undercurrent of crisis against all odds towards hope, advocating for design that heals, innovates, and ultimately transforms. Design Week Philippines invites the Filipino design community here today to recognize design's dual potential for danger and transformation and celebrate its power and responsibility to be used for good. So to start us off, I would like to call on the Deputy Executive Director of the Design Center of the Philippines to say a few words. Please welcome everyone, Lucky Lopez.
Thank you. Hi, good morning. Magandang umaga. Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank everyone for joining us here in the Philippine Trade Training Center for the Design Week Philippines. I hope you have already seen what we have outside. It's very, very nice to see the very young designers that are available outside. Some of them even sabi ko, are you high schoolers? Kasi super duper bata ng mga itsura. It warms our hearts na the young generation is interested in our design economy. Design Week Philippines, as a multifaceted platform celebrating Philippine design, kicked off last Saturday at the Asbury in Makati. With the annual insightful roundtable discussion, The State of Philippine Design, which featured leading visionaries and Filipino trailblazers in design. Also on the same day, leading industry experts offered their insights during the talk Designing Your Career and the workshop Folio Reviews, which catered to young designers and design professionals from diverse backgrounds. Today, the festivities continue here at the Philippine Trade Training Center, where a lineup of exciting activities await the Philippine design community. Carrying on the theme On the Edge, this year's Design Week Philippines magnifies a kind of design that's not just addressed to the compelling challenges of our times, but looks ahead and honors the welfare of our future generations. In resonance with the theme, we are bringing you today the talk Double-Edged Design, which explores the dual nature of design and examines how design solutions can both solve problems and create new ones. It gratefully builds on the political philosopher Henry Schu's idea that we should embrace our responsibility as the pivotal generation and as such rethink the way we use design in our daily lives. In this pursuit of underscoring design's transformative power to be used as a force for good, we will be joined by the Filipino design changemakers here and leaders whom you will meet today. They're Lei Motilla, co-founder and chief executive facilitator of AI for Gov, Architect Gloryrose Dy-Metilla, principal architect and of Suito Design Architects, Sarah Queblatin, artist and regenerative design strategist, Juuya Reyes, user experience lead for Globe Telecoms, Esme Palaganas, co-founder of PHX Fashion Group. May their perspectives and insights offer us the much needed tool to collectively rethink the way we design and help us come up with alternative solutions that can lead us to possibilities of transformation, healing, and hope. With that, I would like to leave you with a quote from Henry Schu himself, to remind us to design responsibly, not just for our generation, but for the generations ahead. Future people cannot reduce our challenges, but we, and only we, can reduce theirs. Or we can indulge in our existing consumption habits and energy practices to make their challenges worse. Our choice is their inheritance. Thank you. Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat.
So thank you, Deputy Executive Director Lucky Lopez. And this is actually the first talk of today. But before anything, I would like to ask yourselves, what is design? You know, we're going to define all of that today, but in just an essence, design is a combination of beauty and aesthetics, utility and sustainability, but that's actually going to just be redefined in the talks today. So our first talk of the day is Double-Edged Design, which explores the duality of design, where we invited a variety of speakers, as mentioned earlier, including designers, artists, activists, and thinkers to share case studies, ethical mindset, and their insights on the power of design and how we can use it to make a world a better place. So speaking on the edge, let's get to meeting our speakers for this morning's talk of double-edged design. So again, think about it. Throughout this course, what is design? What is design for you after this talk? Our first speaker is a co-founder and chief executive facilitator at AA4Gov, a social technology startup that helps government units improve service delivery and promote citizen participation through social innovation, data empowerment, and technology proficiency. So we'll have on the floor Ms. Lei Motilla over here. A round of applause, everyone. So Lei, before I give you the floor, can you give us a short introduction of what we will be hearing from you today? Yeah.
Hello. Hi, everyone. So today I will be talking about AI, the AI adoption journey in the Philippines for public services, and our vision for what it would look like and how we're doing it.
So that's actually design in a perspective of a technologist and I would say on a public service perspective. So take it away, Lei.
Thank you. All right, so AI for Gov, so we are dedicated to accelerate digital transformation for public services. So the way that we are embedding our values is by combining automation, data science, and community organizing. So I'm sure that that is a new thing for you guys to hear. Tech, community organizing, and data science. So that's our edge in this transformation journey. So we all know about this, the pain of public services. We've seen it, we've felt it, and even in data, we are declining in terms of voice, accountability, effectiveness. But this is also true in other middle-income countries as well. So we are not alone. But also in the Philippines, we are falling in terms of e-government index and even the global innovation index. So is this a problem? Yes. And this is one of the inspirations of why we are doing what we're doing at AI for Gov. And to top that off, we've also have our lived experiences because I myself, as part of the government, I worked with the Department of Social Welfare. So I've seen intrinsically what happens in the bureaucracy from the central office down to the cities and municipalities and the GIDE area. So that's the inspiration of why we're doing this. So then we start with appreciative inquiry because at AI for Gov, we start the first AI of AI for Gov is appreciative inquiry, building on strengths and initiatives of the institutions. So we know that there's digitization. We know that the leadership of the government is all about governance, e-governance, innovation, etc. There's a lot of efforts in terms of citizen engagement, so we have to acknowledge that as well. QR codes, Facebook, websites, etc. So many touch points for the citizens to engage their government. And there's also a lot of competency building, workshops, seminars. So there's not a lack of workshop. However, we're also seeing that there are too many systems. There's one system for something, there's another for something. So if you're the executive, if you have a question, you can't actually answer it because the systems are not integrated with each other. So how might we integrate siloed systems. The next one is, okay, there's a lot of touch points. You have Facebook, so for every city and municipality, they have at least 3 to 5 Facebook pages. So we know that right now, citizens engage with their cities and municipalities through Facebook pages. But then there's a lot, and then you have websites, then you have QR codes. But then if you scan the QR code, oops, QR code is expired because only 100 free QR codes available for swiping. And so this is part of the positive deviance, right? It's not required, but people on the ground are trying to engage citizens. So how might we improve the citizen experience? And lastly, there's a difference between, just having knowledge online, but, making it a habit building that actually changes the institution for the better. So how might we upskill with sustainability? So when we talk about artificial intelligence, why did we start here? Because this is the why. Why should we do it? This AI is just a tool. So first we have to start with appreciative inquiry of why we need to apply these things. And personally, myself, I really anchored on AI as a tech because I really believe that this is the technology that has the potential to bridge divides like never before if it is used in, and then in double-edged design, right? There's also harm in that. So this is our design criteria for social technology. So it has to be inclusive, accessible, streamlined. If you are a citizen, you need to be able to have the right to information, express your anger if you're angry, and then share your ideas if you have ideas. And you need to have sustained engagement and also see visible results because you complain a lot, right? But then you can never see what are the results of these complaints. Is there actually change? But then for the public servants, you also need to have automated systems for efficiency and easy monitoring because how will you respond to things if you cannot even manage the many systems that you are handling? And then lastly, it's all about data culture maturity. So we talk about AI a lot, but really at the foundation of it, what is data culture in your organization to enable you to be responsive? So our thinking at AI for Gov is that this is the design criteria if we are going to make an application for AI for public services. So to sum it up, if you're a citizen, you need to feel that you are shaping local development. If you are part of the government, you need to be able to have digital transformation so that you can bring services at people's fingertips. So in this process, you are enabling a better relationship. So it's all about relationship between citizens and the public institutions. So at AI for Gov, this is how we do it. Our solution is managed AI innovation services for the public sector, where we take the government, the public sector, into a journey from being AI ready to having the AI advantage. So this is how we want to show to you how to deconstruct AI, because you hear AI a lot with GPT, with Netflix, with Facebook, but then how do you actually think about operationalizing it in application for public services? So this is what I want to walk you through very quickly. And with that impact, for example, just to make it a little bit more illustrative, for Ate Glessy, for example, now that she has access to information, she actually saves 130 pesos. And because she comes from low-income community, 130 pesos is quite a big thing already. Only to come back, right? You pay for the tricycle, you come back, and just to know what are the requirements for medical assistance, for livelihood assistance, and then you come back again. So that's another 130 pesos one way because she lives in the farthest sitio in the city, in the municipality that she lives in. So that's an illustrative example of how access to information is translating to resources. So this is the team. So why do I have to introduce the team? Because at AI for Gov, we believe that the team, their values, their insights matter the most because we are embedding our identity, our values into the technology. And that's a very different take than you're a developer and you need to do the requirements in order to deliver to your client. Here at AI for Gov, we care about what's your why? What's your SDG advocacy? How are you going to change this? So every time we bat on something, we already think about what's the automation, what's the AI journey for this, what's the transformation journey, how are we going to maximize impact to your stakeholders. Even though the client never actually requires these things, they just want a database so that they can manage this thing. But for us, no, okay, you want a database now, but actually you need to also have this, you have to engage your citizens, you have to engage your multi-stakeholders. So that is already part of the canvas. And every one of us has that culture from the very beginning. So everyone is a designer. You're a coder, but you're also a designer because you're designing, you're embedding your identity as part of the creation. So that's something that we believe that should be the future of how AI is going to be applied in public services. And this is our theory on how we might use AI in terms of bridging existing infrastructure and new channels for engagement that is streamlined. And in this, we have a concept designed for transformation. Citizens are voices to empower, civil society engaged to collaborate, core services, markets to regulate, capabilities, pillars to support. Because as a government staff, you can only do so much. So we also need to have the culture for data, for capabilities. And lastly, commitments. What are the performances to manage inside the organization? Because it's all about the leadership of the staff as well in order to address the demands of the citizens and the civil society. So that is a process that allows you to have agility, evolution, and continuity in improving public services. And this is what we've done. We synthesize the portfolio of services so that you can imagine how might AI be applied across all of these services. So for citizens, we envision and we have done prototypes where as a citizen, you can provide what are your needs, what are your aspirations, and then you can see clearly if you feel this way, 9 out of 10 people in your community also feels this way. So then you can already see where you are in your population. And that's quite transformative because your desires, your insights, your aspirations is not just you. You're not anecdotal. You belong in the bell curve. And here's where you are in this bell curve. And for civil society, we are trying to understand, are CSOs future ready? Are they using tools so that they can engage and add value to their cities and their municipalities? And with that, we are also engaging civil society to look at the infrastructure, report it, and then also rate your cities and municipalities whether or not they feel that they have voices and are they seeing the changes in their cities and municipalities. For core services, there's so many sectoral areas. So we've done with health, the health sector, employment, job facilitation for the vulnerable sector. With the Department of Agriculture, we've done disaster management for the plantations and goods and services. And then we've also done goods and services for the procurement office. And lastly, we've also done disaster management for DILG. And with this, you should be familiar, especially for people in the government sector. There are capabilities, right? There are 6 pillars of capacity development. And this is something that you can also integrate in the data because now you can see this data visualization of how these capabilities translate to the demands of our citizens, our civil society, our devolved facilities and services. And with this, for commitments, you have the Seal of Good Governance indicators. But also you have the Sustainable Development Goals. So for this, we are measuring SDG 16. And we're also looking at this one is a dashboard for peace, for the Committee of Peace and peace processes. And then this one is internal management of your KPIs or OKRs as an organization. Because when you're designing something, you have to look at all of your stakeholders. You look at how the demand and supply would be able to facilitate better services for each other. So you need to have a wide vision and not just looking at how might we apply AI here, but it's really how are we going to transform the why and leverage by the technologies. There. So now we have from multiple citizen touch points. Now we have one streamlined experience, and this is something that I emphasize a bit more because here we conduct participatory knowledge-based development workshops. So this is the part of inclusivity when it comes to AI. Because when you're doing your training data, usually you're doing it, the developers are going to scrape data, they're going to structure it, and then train the model. So in this sense, we are going to the communities, asking them their needs and aspirations. We structure them together, like community organizing style, but then we encode it in such a way that it's abstracted according to the model and the policies. So for example, during the COVID crisis, you have the framework policy, PDITR, prevent, detect, integrate, test, etc. Right? So all of the questions of the population, we were able to label as, this is about prevent, this is about testing, this is about integration. So now you can actually quantify the sentiments of your population according to the policies that are being done on top. So that's an example of how might we become inclusive when it comes to training the models and making sure that these training data actually goes up into something. So that's a classification AI, for example. And then this one, when you ask something, you use GPT models in order to classify what is the natural language intent of this, and then translate it to the corresponding service. So that's an example again of how do you use Gen AI and then use a classifier in order to provide value to the user. So because when we talk about AI, we always think of it as a blob. It must be something that could be dangerous, but I'm not sure. So this is illustrative examples of how AI can actually be applied in public sector and how it could be inclusive. So there. And then lastly, so this is civil society integration. We envision that the Philippine society will have new roles for CSOs. CSOs as facilitators for actionable insights. So for this, the new CSOs of tomorrow, we envision that they are going to be upskilled with data analytics, data science. They could represent the needs and aspirations of their citizens like never before. So imagine that, because before, right, CSOs, they do workshops and then you lobby. But what if the CSOs of tomorrow are going to be capable, equipped with data science tool, with visualizations? If they lobby something for their constituents, they're using data. They're using methodology. They have a motivation, they have a methodology, they have mechanics, and they know their messaging. So wouldn't it be powerful in terms of engagement? Right? It's more inclusive because now it's not the CSOs are saying something, they're activist about something, but then you're not really sure whether it's valid. Now you can quantify it. You can be statistically significant about your needs and aspirations. So that's an example of how we're applying it for this. And these are our portfolio of services that we do. So right now, we have been awarded internationally with WHO for our innovation services. We've also received the Presidential Award last year for the service that we do. And even though we're a small startup, it's very youthful, we also have an ISO, 27001, because we care about security. So for startups and for design aspiring designers, do not curb on security and privacy and accountability, even if you're small, because you're serving the public. And lastly, this is the future of AI. So it starts with your strategy, your leadership. And then you have champions who are equipped and competent about design, data governance, inclusivity, action research, data maturity, proficient management, advocacy, so that you can also have data-driven decisions with integrated system. And at the end of it, you have participatory design, data empowerment, and inclusive technology. And just to answer one of the key questions that maybe you have in your heads about AI, so how do we regulate it? How do we make it accountable? I offer an acronym that I always use in my head. AI pabate. So whenever you're applying, oh, AI daw, AI, let's apply AI. So you ask, AI pabate? A stands for accountability. Who is accountable for this AI system? A. I is inclusivity. How were the models trained? Was it inclusive? Is there mitigation of biases? Who participated in the design, diffusion of this model? So AI, P, privacy. So privacy is all about who are the data subjects, who are the data processors, who are the data owners for this, because they are also part of the accountability and protection of your privacy. AI, pa, B, biases. So whenever you're doing your training data, right, you have to look at the biases. So maybe the training data is only capturing a segment of the population, so it cannot generalize. Maybe your training data does not have a good distribution between male, female, and different genders, or between cohort 18 below and 60 above. So you cannot generalize. So how do you mitigate biases when you're doing your training data? AI pa ba te? Transparency. So transparency of the processes by which the AI models and the automation were executed. So whenever you hear about AI done in public services, you always ask the question, AI pa ba te? Because AI is just a tool. It's about your values, your why, what drives you, what is your leadership, in order for us to serve better the citizens and for nation building. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lei. Thank you so much, and I think we'll be bringing her back later for a roundtable discussion. But I think she summarized it perfectly. AI pa ba te? Right? So it's accountability, inclusivity, privacy, biases, and transparency. Just key things you have to think about. And who would have thought design is part of public service, right? You have to do well-designed services to really serve the people. And also, just looking back, I'm not sure if you're familiar of the 10 principles of good design by Dieter Rams, and I do think it checks one of the boxes. Good design is all about utility and usefulness. And you can see that AI design, the whole service itself, it's well thought of, and someone has to use it, and it has to be of utility. And just looking also at the process of how they were able to develop these AI models, it is centered on humans, right? Even with the data, you're like pretty data-centric, but these are data coming from human interactions. At the end of the day, there has to be empathy, which is part of the whole design thinking process. So on that end, before we go to the next case study, we would just like to thank the Design Center and Design Week Philippines would like to thank the Department of Trade and Industries, our creative venue partner, our festival curator, our government partners, our official media partners, our partner events, a lot of partners, our food and beverage partners, our design mentors, and our program partners over here. We also like to give a shout out to our venue partner this morning, Philippine Trade Training Center, as well as to everyone watching at home on Zoom and on Facebook. So don't forget to tag us in your posts and stories with the hashtag DesignWeekPH 2023 on the edge. So let's hear another case study from our panel. Our next speaker can be considered the face of contemporary heritage design in the BARM region today. Currently, she is the founding partner of Suito Designs Architects, a studio focused on cultural sensitivity and design in urban and cultural heritage. She's also the current Eastern Mindanao representative of the National Commission for Architect and Allied Arts of the National Commission for Culture and Arts, NCCA. So please welcome Architect Gloryrose Dy-Metilla.
Hello, everyone. Good morning.
Yeah,
Is it
hi.
still morning?
It's still the morning. But Architect, do you want to explain a one-liner about what you're going to talk to about today?
It's a phrase. It's architect and moral recovery. Yeah.
So we'll go ahead with your
All
presentation.
right. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Medyo serious tayo at medyo formal. Yeah. Everyone has eaten their breakfast naman, di ba? Are you inspired by the colors? No? It's very deconstructive at medyo may pagka 80s and also 90s, and I've learned that there are several studies before the branding happened. So kudos to DCP. Let's give them a round of applause. I just want to start a bit light because our topic is double-edged and it's a bit, deep and emotional, diba? It's critical thinking while discussing about certain topics that are medyo mabigat. But my topic today, medyo lang, but I want to inspire you about architecture. I'm an architect. I'm also a designer. I've designed several toys as well. But today we'll talk about architecture. From AI to infra, from AI to building. And also let's delve into the term moral recovery. Now, this phrase cannot be understated. No? Architecture plays really a vital role in shaping communities and societies. Design also plays a vital role in shaping communities and societies. Do you agree? One example, no? It shapes how we move, no? Before yung areas in Pasay maybe walkable. Now I asked my friend Andrea yesterday, can I walk? Kasi 1.5 kilometers lang naman from Maidas to here. It's just a 12-minute walk. And she says no. So that's design. So it shapes us. It shapes communities. Now, it also plays a vital role in regeneration. And the next talk would be about that, no? Traditional and architecture elements in new design can serve as a way to pass down cultural values, no? Our knowledge and to the future generation. So, but the problem is we have forgotten it. Usually our buildings do not have that kind of traditional values anymore. In fact, when I was a student, I remember na there are a lot of traditional designs, indigenous designs, but I do not see it in the books. I do not see it in the city that I live in, no? Apart from our very heroes in the design field, the architecture fields, from sila Locsin and Manioso, it's not mainstream. But I believe that by preserving and promoting cultural heritage through architecture, we can contribute to moral recovery of our society. And I want to, from the entire Philippines, I want to dig deeper more into a very small region, of quite new region in Mindanao, which is BARM. And let's first do the case study of BARM, no? BARM Barangay Halls. Do you know that the Maranao Torogan? I think it's quite popular. Who knows it? No? This is actually a national treasure, architectural national treasure of the Maranao, no? And it is an indigenous house of the royalty of the Maranao. Back then, in ancient times, it was used by the Sultan or the Datu or the leader of the community. No? Doon pumupunta yung mga tao to ask for help, no? Because he's a leader. It also serves as a parang prominent building of the community back then. But obviously, without us raising our hands, some of us don't even know it anymore, no? So, and that is also true in the communities, no? Sa BARM. They somehow forget, no? Some areas, they want to revive it, but some areas in Mindanao, they have forgotten it. No? And so in 2020, when I was asked to design the barangay halls, yun ang una namin naisip. No? Reviving the significance of this very important national treasure to a contemporary use. The initial thinking was, since the role of the Maranao Torogan was the parang leaders infrastructure, the barangay hall was also the smallest government unit na infrastructure of the community. Doon literally pumupunta yung mga tao. So they have mediation before they go to justice halls. They talk there. That's really also the area where the leader is. It was just rightful na yung design ng barangay halls would be that of the Maranao Torogan. And so we did. All of the barangay halls look like the Maranao Torogan. What are there in the Maranao Torogan? We have this flying panolongs, winged panolongs, with the Nyaga and Okir there, and Naga and Piako with Okir patterns. We have the windows that are called sinogod, just very similar to the old Maranao Torogan. We also have the Okir patterns there. Similar to the Maranao Torogan, it has a flying effect, and there is the fascia board with Okir patterns, and my favorite part of this is that it is livable. Why? This area here, the gable end, which is almost forgotten on our buildings, is actually that makes our buildings breathable. No? This is where the hot air comes out. Nilagyan namin dyan, so the area is airy. You don't feel warmth, hindi siya kulob, no? And of course, this Maranao panolongs over here. This is showcasing the artistry of the then Maranao Torogan into contemporary form. Now, I was saying about moral recovery, and I think and I believe that architecture can really shape moral recovery, and this would be our second case study. What is moral recovery? It is actually the process of restoring ethical and moral values within the community, anti-discrimination, etc., right? It involves addressing issues such as corruption, crime, discrimination, and negative behaviors. But there are other approaches to moral recovery. It's just that it's not very popular na architecture ang moral recovery, right? So, let's do the other case study. Let's now go to a bigger building that we designed. This is the Municipal Halls of BARM. And let's try to be more parang deeper pa to this specific town called Butig. Okay? Butig, a town in Lanao del Sur. Are you familiar with Butig? Yes, I think. If you are familiar with Butig, in 2016, literally the ISIS group installed their flag in Butig. It was the place where they camped out before they went to Marawi. Marawi City, Butig. Okay? Now, you can just imagine how profoundly low the morale of the community was when that happened. Imagine your town being put a flag by the ISIS group. Imagine Bulacan or something like ISIS group. How would you feel? I felt na low, profoundly low, the morale of butig people. No? And that was very true. So, in 2020, when we were about to design the bar municipal halls, that was what we were all thinking. First is to give them back their morale. How do you give back the morale to butig? First is you carve out who they are and showcase their identity to the world. But not just to the world first. You carve out who they are and showcase their identity to themselves. Pabalikin mo na ang moral recovery. And that was the mandate of also the Ministry of Interior and Local Government. Moral governance and moral recovery. So what would we designed? Something that would give them morale. Having these principles. Sustainable principles meets smart vernacular, meets cultural identity. What are this? The area is livable, multidimensional ang height, airflow is very good, it has a sense of openness. The traditional lattice work was wrapped around the building so that they're always reminded that they are this and not the ISIS flag town. No? The materials used in the production was sourced locally, including timber and wood, and the wood carvers were celebrated. Hinared ang wood carvers to carve. If hindi kaya, we have the moldings there. And then also topped with modern technology. Actually, it was very practical. It actually reduced the logistical cost and it boosts local economy. Imagine niyo ngayon, yung panolong dati was worth 2,000. Ngayon, pagbibili namin siya for other infrastructures, is now 5,000. Kasi meron na silang work, no? The wood carvers. And it also encouraged flexibility. Each element of the decor was contextualized based on where it was. And for this example, it's butig. So we designed a municipal hall that encourages identity of butig. And how is butig now? This is now the butig municipal hall. One time we visit there, they said, "Ma'am, this is really us. This is really us. Finally, a building that is us." Who are they? They're the people in the town of Butig. And I want to say a good news. Just this month, the Butig Municipal Hall was awarded one of the most improved government municipalities in the Philippines and the most creative. Just because moral governance and moral recovery was at the core of the infrastructure. To end, I'd like to say that architecture is much more than our visual structures. We have to change that thinking. It has a power to profoundly influence our moral values and societal well-being. By preserving our cultural heritage and fostering social interaction, architecture and design can catalyze and rejuvenate a society, paving a way for a more moral and ethical future for not just Butig, but for the entire Philippines and the entire world. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you so much, Architect. And I think there's so much there to unpack, but we have a roundtable for later. But isn't that amazing in terms of architecture as a tool for social change? And again, going back again, it's my favorite. It's like 10 principles of good design of Dieter Rams. Another point there, good design is unobtrusive. So who would have known that in that barangay or municipality, may affect, they didn't know that the designs of architect and their firm has this moral effect to its people, right? The barangay officials, they don't know that, but that's the good intention of design. It has to be an unobtrusive, it has to be non-obvious design, but there's design. But again, thank you so much, Architect. So we're gonna head now to the next case study. So our next speaker can be time to move on to our next speaker. So we're coming from public service. We went to architecture. Now we are going to, of course, the digital age. So to our next speaker, she is a user experience practitioner at Globe Telecom, where she specializes in enterprise and employee experience. She's dedicated to redefining how organizations interact with technology and how technology supports the employees of tomorrow. She recognizes that in an ever-evolving landscape of the digital workspace, a user-centric approach, which we mentioned earlier, is pivotal for success. So please welcome Ms. Juuya Reyes.
Hello, good morning.
So a one-liner about your talk today.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking about how design thinking and user experience can actually change the productivity of corporate IT and scale that into a more sustainable approach.
Take it away, Ms. Juuya.
Thank you. All right, good morning, folks. I'm just waiting for my slides. So today, this morning, I'm going to tell you a little story. So come with me as I share what our problems were and how we approached it and solved it via design thinking. Okay, so I think memos, approvals, printing papers is the lifeblood of all corporate institutions. Magpa-file ka ng memo, approve mo sa boss mo. I think there are more than 3-5 approvals. And then if someone says, can you change this particular line? You bring it back to your laptop, type it again, and then you're going to print another batch of paper. And it's a cycle. It's a vicious cycle. And that is the problem that we also faced in Globe. So imagine a company of more than 8,000 people. How many memos are being created per day? How many papers are being printed and being returned? So it's not a very sustainable practice. And at the same time, when it comes to work efficiency, it takes a very, very long time to get the final approvals, to build this something and create that something. So that is the intrinsic problem. That is the pain point. So when we were tasked, how can we shift towards a paperless workplace that addresses not just the sustainability issue of all these papers being printed out, but also improving the turnaround time of these memos? So we had a vision. With this pain point, we wanted to transform our memo inbox to the piles of paper into creating this one. The picture on the right is actually an application that we created called Memo App. We designed this by looking at the symptoms of the problem and creating something in-house that can help digitize and automate all of the routing. The processes involved with the memo filing itself is something that we have inculcated in the design of the particular system so that it is something that can be modified to the requirement of the memo filer, or as we call it, the user. It doesn't follow a very certain process because depending on where you come from in the company, you can have different approvers per se. So I think it's a very simple case study, but that is what I want to share because I think this is something that everyone can relate to, no matter how small a company is or how huge a company is. Even government, diba? This is something that the government also works with. So now let's drill down into what aspects of design have we touched when we created the product on the right. First and foremost, hindi natin makakaila is the visual design, right? Because that is the interface that we are transforming from the interface of the paper to the interface of something digital that you can access from your laptop or your mobile devices. So this one, we really have used user-centric designing to create the UI. How do we make it accessible, whether you're on mobile or whether you're on the go or you're in the office? Because that is a problem. That is an intrinsic problem. Ay, umuwi na si sir ganito, so bukas na lang, rush, ipapalalamove mo yung paper sa kanya. Diba? That's not sustainable either. How much will it cost? Diba? So we had decided to create a mobile version. of the application as well. Aside from that, we had to ensure that there are accessibility features when we created the visual design. We just didn't want to create an app or a desktop interface wherein you can easily see it. So it has to be clean. There are certain functionalities that can allow you to sort through, easily filter the lines that you have to approve to help you with your approval process. So the intrinsic design of the functionalities also allow the efficiency of the user. Okay, but what I want to really delve on is how does this look like on the back end as well? Because when we talk about creating a sustainable design, we just don't want to transform the paper to digital. That is the front end. That is the receiving end. But I think the reality is when you transform something physical or traditional into something digital, what the people or the general public doesn't see is how the infrastructure at the back end looks like. The cost, the environmental impact of traditional infrastructure is not something that everyone appreciates on how much pain, kumbaga, gaanong carbon footprint ang nakikreate ng mga traditional infrastructure with all the servers. Imagine going into a room full of servers na pag may namatay na isa, wala na. Down na tayo. So that is also something that we have incorporated when we created the solution and the infrastructure design. So as you can see, not just the front-end design, we're trying to reimagine how we design the back-end of systems as well, which is why when we created the back-end, we said, how do we make it, number one, cost-effective? How do we make it sustainable? And how do we make sure that we only provision what we use? Because we don't want to set up something that is so much in excess with what we're actually using. So we came up with a solution that why not just build this full stack in Google Cloud, serverless. So imagine, yung back-end nito is all in cloud, wala ka ng server room na maintain, and then based on the traffic that the application gets, then we provision it as needed. There's no wastage, kumbaga. And the good thing about this is we are saving up to 80% of carbon footprint by just going serverless. So I think that is something that I'd like to share, that when we create something, we try to transform not just what the end user experiences, but also how we maintain it as service providers and service operators. So there. Aside from this one, we are also the ones running the operations of this. And I'm very proud to share that this particular endeavor was not created with a very big project team, but actually just a bunch of people who saw a problem, who jumped to action and say, why not build something like this? Actually, parang like 4 people came up with the concept and actually delivered it. And I think this is something that I'd also like to share, especially with now that the delineations of roles, especially in IT, are blurring. Back then, in my younger days, when you're a visual designer, you're only taking care of the graphics. How does the site look like? And then there's another room in the office, puro developers, oozing with masculinity. All they care for is, I'm going to code this, I'm going to squash the bug, I'm going to meet the deadline. But what I'm seeing now in the industry is there is an interlap. There is an overlap already, and that is a very good thing because designers are starting to think like developers, and developers are starting to think like designers. And I think that's something that we all should be doing, no matter what the experience. Not just silo our thinking into our expertise, because at the end of the day, everything is a system. Our output is an input to someone else, and it continues on. And that is something that really contributes to not just creating a product, but a movement that benefits society. Which brings me to the point. We created a product, we solved a very particular globe problem, right? But let's look at the environmental impact. The first 2 bullets are actual globe data. Every month, There are 4,000 memos that are being filed in the company, and each memo averages around 5 pages. This is not inclusive of how many times a memo gets returned. So imagine mga times to siguro, ganyan. And look at how much paper it generates, and converting it into how many trees you can save per month. By going digital, we are actually helping the environment save. So this is something that really quantifies the value of what we're doing. As designers, it's very easy to come up with concepts and products to say that, ay, gumawa ako ng magandang app, ang ganda ng design, right? But my challenge to everyone is, as designers, we are the masterminds of society. When we create products to solve one certain problem, let's try to challenge ourselves more in thinking, if I zoom out a little bit outside my silo of that particular problem, what is the impact to the overall ecosystem of society? And I think that's the litmus test question I always ask everyone. What is the impact to society? And that particular simple question will help ground us into being ethical designers, no matter what our field or discipline is. And I guess now that it's a product, it's something that we also want to extend outside globe, because as mentioned, it is something that's not our problem only. We have to share. We want to make sure that everyone benefits from this particular solution. So from Globe, we have extended it to our subsidiaries, and I'm happy to share that recently, around 1 month or 2 months ago, we have also launched it to the public, so that it's not just the Globe Group that benefits from this digitization. No matter how small you are as a company or how big you are, everyone can benefit from sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Juuya. Again, I'll start again with what principle is this in the Dieter Ramsen's principles. I would say it's innovative, so good design is innovative. Again, paperless to digital is not as easy as it looks. You're not just converting it to a digital form. This in between is something overlooked, because we think design is just transferring to good aesthetics or good looks. Also, you mentioned about not working on silos, and I'm sure you're familiar of the Bauhaus movement, where before the Bauhaus movement started, it's all about art and design was separately taught. In the Bauhaus movement, art and design and other disciplines were combined, because this is how you create new ideas. And honestly, if we are not innovative the way they were, we will still probably be riding carriages rather than cars. We just will have candles rather than light. So I think that's something that we should really think about. Thank you, Ms. Juuya. And lastly, now we're heading now to our last speaker. Our last speaker is an artist and a regenerative design strategist, weaving collective experiences in peace building, cultural heritage, environmental education, and humanitarian assistance. So if we're talking about multidisciplinary, that's it. Among other things, she founded Living Story Landscapes, harnessing cultural memory and imagination in climate and conflict vulnerable communities, as well as the Green Relief Initiative in the Philippines, working with regenerative design in disasters and displacement. So please welcome everyone, Ms. Sarah Queblatin. Another one-liner from you, Ms. Sarah, on your talk today.
Hello, I'm Buntag. Good morning. So my talk is about the power of our intention in design thinking and systemic transformation.
Take it away, Ms. Sarah.
Thank you. So, my sharing would be about learning from the edges, because I work in climate and conflict settings. Especially the Philippines has been my learning ground, for this, and currently now expanding in other countries. But I would say I should have written unlearnings. And then also I wanted to also share that it's very fitting to talk about this now, because I just stepped down from Green Relief. I founded it years ago, and I realized there's so many learnings that I could, draw from there that I'm sharing here. my sharing is really on intention, and I was invited to look into that. And I would come from my own unlearnings, like what were the learnings, how did I how could I have designed it better, and that maybe it can guide you and share with you, not coming from my own, not mistakes, but what could have probably learnings that something that could be useful for your work or your practice. So when I say deep design, I'll share a little bit later, but there's design, yes, but there's deep design, like where you're really drawing deeper from a deeper place, from a deeper purpose. And a lot of these will probably be personal, but also what is our role as change makers or as designers? So when you're designing, the question is, who is designing, right? So often design has been coming from who are we designing for? But we forget you as a designer has a role. You shape the design. How you think, how you feel, what's your worldview, how you perceive an issue yourself, what is the work culture that you generate and collaborate with. So that is also important in designing. So, it doesn't show the quote, but I will read it to you. You can't heal a broken system with broken solutions. To truly transform the narrative of disasters, we must address the challenge of systemic collapse as an opportunity to design from wholeness. Because I noticed, like, I started actually this because when I used to work for humanitarian assistance, the assistance has been fragmented. So you have food, you have livelihood, separate sila. Housing, they're separate. But I wanted to understand, like, if when you go to a disaster site, things are broken, no houses are broken, morale is broken, there's a lot of loss. No? So when your response is also fragmented and broken, then how can you really sustain or move from victim to survivor to thriver? So the invitation is maybe the response should also be whole and holistic, because that way, the way we support or recover is also from that holistic connection. So what if food can be waste, and waste can be energy, or nature that we draw from and build resilience from to protect ourselves from disasters can also be our form of livelihood, and vice versa. So that systemic relationship is important. I will, again, I shared with you, I'll come from learnings. No? So I will mostly tell stories. One thing that I really learned from working in indigenous communities, so I work with around 3 indigenous communities. So one in Sagada, the Kankane, and then in Kalinga also, and also Lake Cebu with the Tiboli. There's one story that really struck me and taught me a lot. Because if you are coming from the social justice or social change movement, you would often think about the difference between equality and equity. No? Equality, kailangan equal, pantay-pantay. Equity is yung some have privilege, some don't. So you have to find a way to meet some of the who have more, who have less. No? So one example of learning that I have. Kasi design from the edge, double-edged kasi yung design, di ba? So we have good intentions, no, going into this Kalinga tribe. We were invited by DepEd. And then Typhoon Mangkut, after Typhoon Lawin was Mangkut, try to remember the local name, but we were already assisting there, but then since we had a donation for relief goods, onti lang yung amount. So we had to, okay, these are the only number of sacks of rice we can bring, number of fish, and then mango, and all these things. So, okay, in this community of 1,000 people, we have to divide this number of sacks of rice. So he said, okay, let's give more to those with this number of children, who have more children, and then less to, yung who don't have children or have less. So we decided on that, but we were training a group of women, IP women in permaculture, and had a demonstration site there. And they said, actually, for our community, we would like to all feel that we were all given the same. We would not like someone to feel that they don't have enough and the others have more. And for us, like, social justice, no, kailangan mas marami but marami yung sa maraming anak, mas kaunti yung sa walang anak. And then she explained, actually, because that feeling na kami lahat meron makes us feel whole. At the same time, we would actually be giving to those who need more. Parang natural sa kanila na dahil meron kaming lahat, mas makakabigay kami. Because we feel na parang there's that sense of dignity, no? And also like it's their ethics, yun. So for me, that was a learning na parang okay, I was really very inclusive. I mean, all other things we were very consultative of their indigenous wisdom, and the whole process of designing a 5-year plan was also very inclusive. But that really like wow, oo nga no, I wasn't listening well, and that also taught me that it's really even if we have our own good intentions, there's really a different context for their own local wisdom. This is not in Kalinga, but this is our workshop in Sagada for their DRR planning. And we started with the community vision of the indigenous elders. Like, how do they imagine resilience in their community? And they came up with, their vision. We drew because they're not really like logic. Like if you come up with a log frame with an indigenous community, it's not that easy. But we came up with stories, with visions, and then we made it into a log frame by using the parts of a tree. So from that process, it taught us that it can be very logical at the end, but you start with a relational. What is their really their true values and wisdom, and their vision for their community at the heart of the process. Okay, second story. So interesting that Attorney Gloryrose Reyes is here because we both volunteered for a community in Leyte after Typhoon Yolanda. One experience I had that really taught me how to be really trauma-informed. I mean, it started as a psychosocial support, working with art therapy in community. That was my first training in humanitarian assistance. So, but when I started with permaculture, working with the earth, nakalimutan ko siya. Parang I focus more on the planning, the growing of food, ganun. So, when we volunteered in after Typhoon Yolanda, we brought in like permaculture volunteers, earthship volunteers. We had a built-in earthship. We thought about natural building, And we had this whole team, lots of people came and volunteers from around the world. And then we were wondering, we had so many invitations, we prepared lots of food, and then people, only a few arrived. And that often happened a lot. So we were like, why is that? Kasi we're here naman to help, di ba? Parang, it was the hero thinking ba, na, oh, we're here to help, why won't you receive the help, ganon. And then eventually, it took some time. Siguro, Filipino, di ba? Minsan nahiya sabihin. The barangay captain finally told us, we really appreciate your support. We really appreciate your assistance. But can we just fix our roofs first? Or can we just have, what we need to get by first before we learn something new? And this was 2013, no? So that taught me a lot that actually, even if you have the good intentions again, they also, people coming from this loss, no? When you, in the psychology, if you lost something, even if you didn't go through a disaster, you're not ready to come up with something new, to learn something new. You still have to recover from the sudden loss or the shock na, oh, I used to live this life. I used to have this house and then you're inviting us to think of a new way of doing this house. So trauma-informed approach is to really truly understand that something happened and people need time to grieve, to understand, to make peace with what they've lost, and that so that when they recover their resilience is to help remember them who they are, and their identity, their capacity to recover. Then that's more easier to accept, okay, now I can move on. I can think of something new. I can think of a different way of growing food or a different way of building my house. So that's a learning for me. This is a image of, but this is a different graphic, but it's in Marawi when we worked on growing food in the camps. And we came up with a resilience map coming from their inner resilience. And also, like, what do they already have? What do they already know? And before, instead of teaching them like this is how we should grow the food, or this is how we should organize you, but what kind of food do you want to grow, or what kind of skills do you have already in growing food? Then we develop learning sites together using the garden. Okay, designing with nature for a generation. I mean, as a permaculture designer, permaculture, for those not familiar, is a design philosophy, ethics, a system of actually just designing with nature. You're just tuning in how nature works, and then you align with how nature works, and you create habitats or ways of living based on how your ecosystem is working. I'm not gonna go deeper so much on this, but I guess for me, one learning is the place dictates your design. So, for example, we ideated a national lab for ecosystem restoration last year. We were invited to develop like a multi-stakeholder platform for setting up the targets for the national targets for the UN Decade for Ecosystem Restoration. So somebody approached us from eCraft, and then they really liked the idea of deep dialogues and multi-stakeholder partnership, but for using theory U and listening and dialogue. But it's so we try to present a pitch for that, and inviting the national landscape actors to come together and consult from a place of listening and dialogue with communities. But of course, the old way of doing these things, medyo mahirap pasukin yung more deeper place of designing. So we didn't end up doing it. So we were kind of bummed. But in the end, we realized in my city of Cebu, actually, there were already many disaster-affected places. There were also many innovators. So we started the lab there. And from that, we realized it's not about, a plan that you have this grandiose plan, but the place will invite you to design. And you connect to the place, and nature will be your guide. So it's a bit metaphorical, but of course in permaculture these are PDC, permaculture design for disasters, with grassroots leaders from the farmers we worked after in Bicol, after the typhoons in Leyte, in Marawi, in Kalinga. So we really ran like a design process of how they could use the permaculture principles to design for food, for livelihood, and ecosystem resilience. And this is one of our demonstration sites in Kalinga. Sayang lang nag-pandemic kasi so hindi na siya na-complete, but yeah, that's an example there. Now we go into deep design. So I started with the idea of deep design from the edges. I'm trying to source the origin of deep scaling, but I know Tatiana Fraser went deeper into this. I was curious also, when we work with the landscape, we work of course with trees, with nature. So maybe, because a lot of plants, you've heard a lot of scaling processes, right? Scaling ups to make an idea or prototype to be more of high impact, to have a lot of things to be implemented. You institutionalize it. So scaling up is that. But scaling wide is also, replicating, having multipliers. You replicate from one site to another. You contextualize, but the same like kind of plug and play design. But we often forgot the idea of designing deep. Like how many solutions? Philippines has many policies, best practices, but not all of these policies really are effective because we have a lot of culture of, the old traditional politics we have, our relationship with our stakeholders, how our leaders think, and the trust building is not a lot of us trust our government or trust each other to collaborate as well. And in the end, most projects fail because of that, and that's important to everything. So when you have a deeper relationship, when we invest more in that, and how, no matter how good your solution is, if you don't have that culture of trust building and leadership, it's not sustainable. I'm gonna go there, because earlier I introduced these 3 levels of using the tree. So I paralleled it to a tree, how a tree works in 3 levels as well. So the deep scaling is really to go root and heal. And one learning I have from this is actually root. The word root is gamot, diba, in Bisaya. But gamot in Bisaya, and then another language, gamot is medicine, right, in Tagalog. So it's the deeper roots can help heal us. And then pag-ugnay, also, of course, the three branches and connects. And so that's also the way we connect with others, and we can also make impact. There's more of us, so that's scaling wide. And then scaling up is, of course, you institutionalize it, you make it a real permanent implementable development plan or something like that. So that gives fruit, bears fruit as that. So oftentimes we start in the top. In some of the designs is we work with is aiming at the top, but we actually, if we start from the bottom, what are the old mental models we have as Filipinos, as in our community, in our ways of thinking, then we can really truly design better. So last one, so balik tayo dun sa intention of the leader, of the designer. And I would invite you to the idea na actually you as a designer is also a leader. You're leading in a way that from the place of trying to create something new and help influence and change something. And I was doing this theory journey before. We use Theory U. I don't know if some of you are familiar. It's a change model started by Otto Scharmer and people from MIT. And they work with these 5 stages of co-initiating, when you initiate an intention and making a plan or an intention of a journey. When you co-sense together, you're sensing together in learning what the system is like, who are the people in the place, what are their realities. So it's like design thinking, right? You build an empathy. And then presencing at the bottom is now you understand the system from outside, who is there, what is existing. You bring it back to yourself. Because often, a lot of our work when we're doing, again, it's about designing for who, but we forget who is designing. In the end, we are a big role in this process. So it brings us back, it mirrors us back. The system is mirrored back to us. And from that place, when the system is mirrored back to us, we can now see what is my role in this? How can I design from that deeper understanding of the system and my role in the system? And then when we draw from that presencing, we can co-create better, co-create a plan, and then evolve the plan better. So when we were doing this, I realized, parang Filipino din tong system na to. Parang when, nakikipag, ugnay tayo, we gather everyone, we connect together for a shared intention. Like this one, we're here. And then pag you go to, you design something, di ba? You build empathy. And the Filipinos, we have this really knack for knowing what's the feeling in the room. Tatansyahin natin. That's our empathy, our pakikiramdam, no? And then, pakikipagkapwa. So, now we can relate better to others. Mas malalim yung pag-sense natin ng shared self. Kapwa is our shared self. So, that also come from a reflection na, what is my role in this system? I'm so related to this. This affects me. I have a role here. But what is how am I leading myself? And then so that I can lead others better. So, pag-akit natin, dun rin. So, yung pagkakipagbayanihan natin, mas malalim kung mas malalim din yung pakikipagkapwa. Mas malalim pakikipagkapwa, pag malalim din yung pakikiramdam natin. So then, yung binibigay nating buhay, yung pagre-regenerate natin, mas umuusbong, no? Mas life-giving. So, that journey was an invitation for me as well in my work. And also, I hope this also inspires you. So how are you leading yourself? Inspired by the tree. Kaya rin siya pamumuno kasi, of course, we use designing with nature-based solutions. But then, puno as the core word for pamumuno or leadership, being this inspiration of the tree. So compared to pangulo, which is ulo lang, pamumuno is yung parang a more ecosystem-based leadership that is moving from ego to echo, so mas connected sa how nature works. So I hope that is an inspiration for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Sarah. And I love we have also, what's this? Arali Bata ba to? Tama ba? Yeah. By buy-in, I'm sorry. And then we have it also here. So again, what's a 10 principle here that I think I can fit? It's good design, by the way, is thorough to the last detail. So what's that example from that discussion? You do multi-stakeholder consultations. So that is getting really on a multi-stakeholder point of view. It's not just one point. She also mentioned about removing our biases as designers, right? I think I want to connect it also with the artificial intelligence earlier. AI has biases. Us as designers will also have biases. But Ms. Sarah mentioned about listening, empathy, and that kind of removes your biases and you become connected to who you should be designing for as well. And I think before we're gonna have a roundtable discussion, but this is something everyone echoes, right? Design really is about the making of a new culture, from spoon to city to AI services, to listening. And this is, by the way, is a quote from Max Bill, an architect. So we will have more of a lively discussion in this roundtable. I would like to ask the panel to come into the stage as we talk more about what you do, going deeper in terms of design. And of course, later we're going to have a discussion or an open Q&A actually, where you can ask questions to our speakers. All right, so we are now sitting, everyone's comfortable, and I think we'll just go one on one. You've already heard their case studies and personal stories. Now we just want to reinforce what is your organization all about and why is it related to design. So maybe I'll start with Miss Lei over here. Yeah.
Okay, so AI for Gov is a social technology startup, and it's related to design because we're embedding our values, our worldview, to technology that is being used by a lot of stakeholders.
So again, design through empathy, through creating any AI model. And of course, Ms. Juuya.
Hello. So as I think everyone know, Globe Telecom is a telco company. But I think what not everyone knows is that we are actually moving from telco to techco. Hence the big pivot also of our services and our enablement activities into improving how corporate IT works.
Of course, Ms. Architect Gloryrose.
Yes, so my firm is Suito Designs Architecture, or Suito Designs Inc. We are into cultural sensitive design, specifically peace and healing in design. We're very into participatory design as well. And one of our focus right now is, of course, the BARM region and DOT. So we work a lot of infrastructures there in the BARM. And we're deeply rooted to traditional designs. Specifically, I want to celebrate Mindanao design and architecture and the forgotten architecture with indigenous design in the Philippines, specifically the built environment. Yeah.
Sarah.
Yeah, so I more now with Living Story Landscape, so I just left Green Relief Initiative, but I'm still nurturing it as a founder. But Living Story Landscapes is aiming to restore and restory, because restoration is our practice of working with nature, but also we restore and restore narratives of place and belonging through cultural memory and imagination. So we notice, like when we work in communities using growing food or permaculture, it's not just about the soil, but it's also the soul. So what are their cultural wisdom, their values, and we use the arts and culture to help make that visible. And then that informs the design better. Yeah.
So we see now the correlation between design and the different sectors that we have. So we have built environment, we have AI over there. So really different ways how you can adapt design. And I think earlier at the back room we were discussing about we're coming from different industries, but when we talk about design, it's a similar language. Nagkakaintindihan kami. And I think that's amazing in terms of design thinking. So now we go into the discussion of double-edged design, right? So what is it? I mean, design changes the way you sit. If your chair is good, right? The way you sit or the way you stand. Now, I want to go back to the panel. And what do you think is design's role in creating a positive future? And also, when does it becomes bad? So I think something physical, I think, is a good way to start. I'll go to architect here with coming from the built environment. Yeah.
So design creates positive change when it is in synergy where it is. Like what design can do a negative change. Sorry, let me change that. The positive change when it is in synergy and it is correctly contextualized, right? In the opposite, when it is not in synergy and it is not correctly contextualized, meaning extracted, design becomes negative. And that is very powerful because this is somewhat happening right now. There is a lot of extraction and design in indigenous designs, not just for structures, but for other industries as well. Extracted lang. Kunwari, extract ka lang ng ukir and put it into ano. That becomes problematic because, for example, we design a barangay hall that is extracting an ukir from Maranao to an area in South Obian, Tawi-Tawi. It becomes a problem because the South Obian people will say, why are you promoting Maranao design in a place where Sama thrives, right? So contextualize design will make it positive. Non-contextualized design will make it definitely negative. Yeah.
I love that. Like contextualizing really focuses on the usability of this design. And honestly, also for the panel, if you want to jump on any of the speakers' points as well, that will be great. But yeah, so I think coming from a built environment, na again, the contextualizing of it is pretty essential. Let's go into the AI Gov perspective. On your end, what does it take for design to be good or bad?
I resonate so much with the talk earlier by Miss Sarah. I was thinking about this, like, wow, this tree, it's kind of algorithmic thinking because, right, problem framing, pattern finding, deconstruction, abstraction, and then algorithm. So it's the same thing that we as programmers, what we use to build technology. So I was reflecting about that, and what comes to mind are words like context, rootedness, and in our case, reflectiveness. So if you don't reflect, if you don't root, if you don't contextualize, then you are only creating surface level type of intervention, surface level type of design. So then you may be able to fulfill a functional criteria, but as Ms. Sarah would say, it's not deeply rooted into something that changes something else. And this is something that we see in the tech industry a lot. So whenever there's a call for automation, for digitization, you can call any programmer. There will be input, process, and output, for sure. But will it be transformative? Will it be coming from a place of reflection, context? And that is a good example, I believe, of double-edged design. So it's not just every programmer is not equal, right? So you may deliver the functional requirement, but you may not be able to deliver the transformative requirement of the product.
Anyone want to
Yeah,
add on that?
I wanna piggyback on that as someone coming from IT as well. I think design starts becoming a negative force when our designs are created under a very singular point of view. I just want to solve this one particular problem without regard into the impact into the chain. Wala kang impacts, wala kang view on the cause and effect. And I think that is what we need to be rooted to as responsible designers, because what we want to be is to build and design solutions for the people and not on the backs of people.
Sarah? Yeah.
Answered everything.
You
Yeah.
answered everything, right? So again, there's always a commonality there if you have a good perspective in design. And I think the Architect Gloryrose also mentioned about the contextualizing, na the beauty lang is the one that we're focusing on. I think that's essentially what's an automatic response. Maganda ba? Is it aesthetically pleasing? But we do not think about the functionality of it, the utility of it. You mentioned about kaya ba tayong may server dito, pero we can also make it into a cloud? That sustainability of the design for you as well. So on that end, I want to go on specific questions on for each of our panel. So for Architect Gloryrose, how does the double-edged nature of design affect indigenous communities in the Philippines?
This is a very concerning question, right? Like you said, design is not just beauty. If you think that way, you're not supposed to be in design. Because design in itself is subjective. What may be beautiful to you may not be as beautiful to me, right? So, and that also pertains to the indigenous design community and how we try to extract certain designs. It becomes problematic when again it's being extracted, right? I'm doing a bit of konting tawa because marami tayong we can learn a lot from this because it's always happening, not only in the industry that I'm in, but in the industry outside, like fashion, to be blunt about it, no? And if walang feeling of ownership, no, in indigenous design specifically, because indigenous design has a different worldview than us. Our indigenous brothers and sisters has a different worldview than us. If they don't feel that sense of ownership to that kind of design, that's very problematic, no? And there's a lot like that. No, sasabihin ng mainstream, ang ganda. Sasabihin ng ground, ang pangit, no? And that really holds true with my personal experience, no, as a designer. Panol, for example, example na lang natin yung case study ko so that everyone will understand. Yung panolong na dinesign namin, ang lalaki ng curves, no? That's an indigenous design, right? Okay. Pagdating sa ground, ang dami ng curves. Iniba nila yung design nung panolong, yung kier nun. Did you see it? There's a lot of variations there. In fact, if you go to the different barangay halls, iba-iba. There's not one design na There's not one design na okir. Because nga, they have a different way contextualized to each. So that's, for me, is a problem in my design view as a for example, if I'm a very selfish designer, right? Bakit hindi sinunod? Ganyan. But those are the things that happen because they have the ownership of that design. Iba-iba naman si butig, saka si pagawayan. Iba na, kahit they're just the barangays are just seated to very, very near. Iba-iba naman. So, that's a problem for me, but it's not a problem for them. So, that's why it's double-edged. So, as designers, I think the value that we should, and I think Sarah also said this, we should scratch out is our very bad value of being, selfish. No? Sometimes we can be a facilitator rather than the one that's really say, just do this, no? And so that you see there's really beauty in the collaboration with the grassroots. And I think if we have collaboration, that diminishes the potential negativity of everything in terms of indigenous design. So yeah, ownership and collaboration has to be there.
Of course, I think we're all thinking, does the designer kind of dictate it? I think it's subjective. You mentioned about subjectivity also, and I think that's something we should also hone. This critical thinking, looking at both sides, walang black or white. There's always that gray area in terms of designing for the people, by the people. I'll go now to, in terms of user experience in design, particularly in the Philippine setting, to Ms. Juuya. Like how it is for, how does design affect user experience, especially in the Philippines?
Okay, so I think design really affects user experience, whether it be in the digital or in the physical sense. Because design, when used deliberately, it can be used to include or alienate people. right? Like in the physical sense, there are certain handicap accessible designs, like in the malls, the ramps, diba? If you see it, it's a check mark. Yes, it's inclusive, but have we actually tested some of these in reality? Because 'di ba, parang in theory, it's good because it ticks a box, but in practice, when someone with a handicap actually uses this, it can't be useful. And it happens like that all the time because the people who have created the solution, who created the design, did not even consult the one who that is being targeted for. So I think the message here is when we try to create designs, especially meant to include a certain demographic or a cohort, we don't need to think for them. We need to get them to think with us. And it's not just a matter of, I empathize with them naman, so I'm going to put this little thing here. But rather, I will not assume that I know their truth. I will not assume that I know their experience because that's just the tip of the iceberg. We haven't lived their everyday lives. So as responsible designers, what we really need is to give them a voice. We welcome them to the stage and co-design with them. And that's the only way that we can really say our design is really inclusive, when we don't take their voice for ourselves and let them be their own voice.
Thank you. And I think I'll jump into connecting it to Ms. Lei in terms of inclusivity ng stakeholders. So same thing with Glow, it's a fintech company, and now we're going to AI Gov, right? How does the double-edged nature of design affect governance and public service in our country?
So, because of Miss Sarah's talk, it reminded me that because that was my 180 degrees. In my early career, I was in the humanitarian sector. I spent 2.5 years in the Yolanda area. I was in every barangay that you can think of, in Leyte. And I was very frustrated. I saw a lot of leadership. I saw a lot of needs. And then in every workshop that we conducted, I conducted every type of workshop there is. Disaster management, women empowerment, youth leadership, everything that you can think of. And then after the workshop, there are meta cards, like what was there. And then I always think, and then what's next? So then the system thinker in me, so I feel with the community, there was a collective intent, there was meaning. I was inspired, everybody's inspired. But then I think about the Philippines, the systems, the bigger scale. Then I got frustrated. So that's why with AI, I really anchored into it when I found out that this technology existed, because I thought this is a technology that could potentially bridge that divide. Because I thought very quickly that, okay, this is knowledge management. This is collective intelligence. Now, what if we have all of these Manila papers with all of these imaginations, with all of this indigenous collective knowledge, but then you feed that through a system that then scales. So then when she was showing the tree, I was like, that's the vision, right? That rooted from different experiences, different cultural vocabularies, different values, but then you have a model that actually patterns that, abstracts that into a structure that helps policy, that helps decision making. But that decision making is not coming from the Council of the Congress representatives, It's coming from that quantitative and qualitative, coming from the roots and the nutrients, right? That coming from all over the Philippines. And that should be the future of how we can use such technology, very powerful technology, but designed for inclusivity. So those frustrations, imagine someone asked me before, what's your vision for this? My vision, if I get the money to do this and mastermind this, I would like to have a lot of workshops all over the Philippines and all the areas, and then have those knowledge, collective knowledge represented. Statistically, mathematically, but also, qualitatively. And then that should inform every policy, every decision, everything that we do in the Philippines. Because, that's transformation. And I think that's possible in this generation.
Who have thought we'll be thinking about maths in terms of design, right? I'm sorry, you can't escape the maths, I think. And of course, we'll go now to a very well-cited Miss Sarah across the panel. How does double-edged design, nature of design now, affect climate-vulnerable countries, do you think? Ooh.
It's very hard to think about. Yeah, because it's so uncertain, right? But also very certain. Like science tells us, we have a window of 7 years before irreversible climate change happens. But actually, if you're from the Philippines, that's already not just 7 years, maybe even shorter. Double-edged design is to be because I remember I was consulted by an activist movement to to develop like a listening circle for barangay leaders. And a lot of them, during the pandemic ito, and how do they support the community pantries? And kasi there was like mistrust, no, government, barangay leaders, like activists, or mga red tagging ganun for the community pantries. And but a lot of the barangay leaders actually want it. It's not because they don't want it, but because they're stuck with the old way of the traditional politics. They want to innovate their system, but they're stuck in that place. I think when you think from the how systems, the collapse, the idea of collapse, often kasi when yung collapse is when things destroy, the system is collapsing. No? I think you're probably parang hearing that a lot more now. The government system, the old way is dying, something like that. And like the psychology earlier, I talked about trauma-informed understanding. Not everyone is ready for the shift. So it's also an invitation to learning how to deal with the complexity. So the capacity to lead with in times of uncertainty. So that self-awareness is so important. So for example, like in the climate movement, there's a lot of talk now about decolonizing the climate movement because the old development model has been like international development dictated and then humanitarian coming from one country and then going to a developing country. That concept even is like you have to rethink like who dictates what is development and what is underdeveloped. So it's not, there's no clear answer, but I would say siguro from that deeper place, no, where we're able to presence and then makipagkapwa and going to our own purpose, is you're guided by that deep intuition and understanding what is. There's no right or wrong. Is it whole? Does it bring us back to our own identity or knowing or belonging to place? So siguro it's very hard to say. Like one story. We were doing this community in Leyte. We went back because we felt, I think we really did bad in the first round because we were just volunteers and then somebody else was handling the project. Found out that the organization was a bit, not capable to do it. So we went back and then we brought the women farmers to train with the Visayas State University on restoring their riverbanks because their local place, they were, every time may bagyo, kinakain yung land nila. So, sa river nahuhulog yung barangay. So, we wanted to work with nature as a way to buffer from the floods. So, we brought them to the university. And then the one of the heads of the climate change research, that we're gonna grow trees and native trees, bamboo, ganun. Tapos, one of the farmers said, paano yun? Trees na nga yung nagsira sa house namin. So, bakit pa kami magtatanim? Of course, in Waray or Tagal, o Bisaya ba yun? And so that was a double-edged, diba? Kasi you wanna use the trees to restore the landscape, to be resilient, but also can be the deadly thing. But it is really nice. Dr. Ed Mangawang was the person I'm quoting here because he's the person who actually said this. He said, well, it's a matter of where you grow the trees. No? That's also permaculture. You working on the zoning, the right location. You study the wind patterns and of course, you don't plant it somewhere now. It would be obstructive to when it finally flies. And then you also plant native trees kasi the more indigenous to the place, the more it can adapt well and the more it can hold. But what it invited me to think about is that that's where the deeper, roots come from. It's not just about the tree as a resilient thing, but when you are deeply connected to the place, to the knowing of the place, but also the people, the network of root systems. So the more our deep scaling of relationships and trust building are deeper, and our deeper understanding of ourselves, our role, and a deeper sense of place, then it can withstand further disaster. So I think that's probably the double-edged metaphor I can talk about in climate, climate change. Yeah.
Of course, and I think they were able to deal with the double-edgedness of design by being great designers / design thinkers, because I would say bad designers just jump to designing derecho. You can see that all of them, they take so much time empathizing, listening to the people before actually designing. So I do hope we see that as a responsibility as designers. So I think we'll go now and open the floor to questions to the floor. So anyone who has any questions at all? Well, I think we have a little fun thing here. We have an orange stuffed toy. If you're holding it, you can ask a question. I do think Miss here has a question, and he will throw it to you, and you should be catching it. There you go. So, question, please. Yes.
Hello, ma'am. I'm really interested in AI for CSOs. Because I'm thinking, did you use that for the municipality or for the barangay?
So we use it with civil society organizations. So we define them as citizens as the larger citizenry, right, as an individual. CSOs are organized groups representing some advocacy or another. It could be public or private. So what our strategy for doing it is first research on our CSOs future ready, because we're doing a problem framing exercise first, right? Because we have to have a shared understanding that there is a gap, right? So CSOs institutionally and in the history of social change in the Philippines are primary agents in social change, in representing the powerless, in empowering their grounded community. But then things are changing. The landscape is evolving. AI is moving fast, technology is moving fast, and that already existing digital divide has just expanded even more. So then who will you empower? Are you going to empower the, middle upper class who are already using, you all have your mobile devices? Or will you empower the institutional representation of citizenry towards, being equipped with new skills, new technology as well? So in that case, we're first giving them a way to reflect. Am I ready? Am I ready to represent my constituents, my members? And if you are not, then let us help you. We offer services as well for this to be empowered, and we work with the local government as well. So with this one, with the one that I cited earlier, it's with DILG NCR, and they're trying to do this with first four cities: Manila, Quezon City, Pateros. What was the other one? Manila, Quezon City, Pateros, and was it Makati? So those four. So then we're trying to have these data collection first with CSO. So then we have a good reflection first, and then strategy after that.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And then you have the orange fluff toys there. Anyone who has a question, because we're going to throw it to you. Any other questions? Okay. Okay, there's one question, so it's a bit far. No. Okay, oh no. Okay, all right. Oh, okay, there you go. Yes, question please.
So my question goes out, it's about the AI again. It's a mic. How do you, I don't know if this is part of the scope of the project, but how do you envision or guarantee the integrity of the data collection process?
Through AI pabate.
Right.
That framework. So process is really important. So a lot of people in the AI research thing, they try to attack the model. But for me, you attack the process because the AI models are just that. But there are people navigating around present models. So it's kind of like a tool, but then it's not about whether the LLM model is, bad or good. It's about how you're going to shape it. So you have a base model. So that's, what these powerful models are. They are pre-trained, right? So they're pre-trained meaning they've come from every possible sources in the internet. So it's pre-trained for that. Now, that has the representative values of everything in the internet, which is not representative of humanity, right? But then as the modeler, as the person having that model, you can shape it. You can fine-tune it towards your own database, towards your own knowledge base. So you can shape the design of this model. So if we were to be transparent into something, you assess the values of the designers, the values of the programmers, where they want to take this model, what's their intention about it, and how they are putting safeguards and controls in place in order to ensure that that model does not hallucinate, that model does not say, disinformation, and, that model actually does its job of providing value to you, responding to what you need.
Thank you so much. We won't throw the stuff today anymore. But I think that wraps up our Q&A. And I do think just going across every person in this panel, architecture, your organizations, AI can be threats if it's not contextualized, empathized. It's going to be a tool if you do that, if you empathize and contextualize these designs that you have. And the panel also, I do think, represents what design is. As everyone who designs devises courses of action aimed at changing existing situations into preferred ones. And we've seen the case studies that we've seen here today, that they are designing for preferred ways of living, preferred ways of thinking, and preferred ways of governance. And actually that quote came from not a designer, but actually a political scientist. So the ways that we can design, we can do it. And I do think, look at the responsibility in creating these processes and design minds of thinking. On that end, that is all the questions that we have today. I think we can go on and on of this. I have a lot of questions I'll ask later. But let's give one more round of applause for our speakers. And thank you to everyone watching and listening to our talk on double-edge design. So we value your feedback. Please take the time to let us know what your thoughts on this roundtable by scanning the QR code over there and completing the feedback form. And on behalf of the Design Week team, and I would like to thank our partners, the Department of Trade and Industry, our creative venue partner, our festival curator, our government partners, our official media partners, our partner events, our food and beverage partners, and design mentors, and of course, our program partners here. You can see here on the slides. And this day has just actually started. We started early. Enjoy our last day of Design Week Philippines with our lineup of talks, workshops, tours, and more. So to learn more about the festival and to get updates on all things Design Week Philippines, head over to Design Center's social media accounts, DTI Center of the Philippines here on Facebook and on Instagram. And again, don't forget to tag us in your posts and stories with the hashtag DesignWeekPH 2023, hashtag On The Edge. So again, I'm Esme Palaganas. Thank you so much for joining us, and this has been Double Edge Design.